Yeah. Ever find yourself like flipping back through your photos on your phone, back a couple years, 3, 4 years maybe, and you look at the photos and you're like, man, this phone was so slow back then.
Hmm. Hmm. It's crazy how much faster they get, right? And that's basically Moore's law in action, right?
Mm-hmm.
Computing power is doubling like every 2 years, but the price stays about the same. But what if I told you that same kind of principle could apply to everything?
Yeah.
That's a whole mind-blowing idea that Sam Altman, who's, he's a pretty prominent voice in the AI world. That's what he explores in this piece, Moore's law for everything.
Right.
So basically, Altman's arguing that we're right on the edge of something massive, something even bigger than just a cool new tech gadget, right?
Yeah. He's saying AI has the potential to, make not just technology cheaper, but like everything,
Yeah.
healthcare, housing, education, like
Yeah.
drastically cheaper in the next few years.
Yeah.
Pretty wild, huh?
It is. It is. And I think what's really interesting about what Altman's doing here is that he's drawing this parallel between what's happening now with AI and those huge leaps forward that we've seen throughout history. Think things like the agricultural revolution, right?
What?
Or the industrial revolution, even like the dawn of the whole computer age.
Right.
These weren't just about, shiny new tools. They completely reshaped societies.
Totally. Totally. It's like he's saying, hey, buckle up because things are about to get seriously interesting. And what makes AI so different from, I don't know, like the invention of the car or the internet, right? It's that AI can actually potentially replicate this thing that we've always considered like uniquely human thinking.
Yeah.
Altman, he paints this picture of this future, right, where you could have AI doctors and they're like diagnosing illnesses with this crazy accuracy better than any human doctor.
Or AI teachers, right? And these AI teachers are tailoring lessons to each student's learning style, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And here's a real kicker. Since AI can work all the time, 24/7, no breaks, doesn't need a paycheck, right? The cost of these services, it could totally plummet.
Right.
It could make them accessible to everyone, not just the super rich. Exactly. And that's where this Moore's law for everything really comes in. If you think about it, if AI can start to automate these tasks across all these different industries, from building stuff to healthcare to education, the cost of labor, which is, let's face it, it's a huge chunk of what we pay for, almost everything, that starts to shrink. Way down.
So we're basically talking about this world where we have this crazy abundance, right? Stuff that seems super expensive now, maybe even impossible to afford. It could be easy to get for everyone.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of utopian, don't you think?
It definitely has that potential, right?
Yep.
But, what Altman talks about next, it's really important. He's like, hold on a second. Even if change is good, if it happens too fast, it can be a huge problem. Think about it. Imagine if all of a sudden certain jobs just, poof, disappear because of AI. If we're not super careful, a lot of people are going to get left behind in that kind of rapid change.
Yeah, it's like that whole thing, right? The future's already here. It's just not evenly distributed.
Exactly.
And I feel like Altman's really worried about this gap between the haves and the have-nots, economic inequality. He seems to think AI could make that even worse.
Absolutely. And this is where things get super interesting when you start thinking about what the government can actually do about this. Because Altman's argument is that those old solutions, I don't know, just raising taxes on rich people, they might not work anymore in a world where AI is creating tons of wealth, probably in the hands of a very small group of people.
So what's the alternative then? Does Altman give us any ideas for actual solutions?
He does, actually. He brings up this really bold concept that he calls capitalism for everyone.
Okay.
And the heart of it is that, yeah, building wealth is essential, but we got to make sure everyone benefits. It can't just be about having a booming economy. We got to make sure everyone feels the good stuff from all that growth, not just a select few.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great and all, but how do we actually make that happen?
So get this. Altman gets really specific here. He wants to create this thing called the American Equity Fund.
Okay.
Now, before you think it's just some crazy idea, just hang with me for a sec.
All right. What is this? What is the American Equity Fund?
Okay, so in the simplest terms, right, it's basically this system where part of all the money being made from AI, and all these tech advances, that money's collected and then given directly to every single citizen as this regular dividend.
A dividend? You mean what you get from owning stocks?
Exactly. But instead of owning shares in some company, everyone basically owns a piece of the future growth powered by AI. How crazy is that? And to pay for all this, Altman suggests taxing two things: companies, but only ones that are worth a certain amount, particularly the ones cashing in on AI, and then also land, like privately held land, because, they're making more of that. The whole idea is to grab some of that, like, inevitable growth that's coming and just share it directly with the people.
I mean, that's a pretty wild idea. But what's like the impact on people's actual lives? What does he think is going to happen?
Okay, so Altman's argument is that this system, it could completely change everything. Like, we can see poverty drop dramatically because everyone's got this financial safety net, right? It could also give people so many more choices. Like, think about it. The freedom to go back to school if you want, start that business you've always talked about, or just, I don't know, spend more time with your family. And you wouldn't have to rely on, like, a traditional job to make ends meet.
It's like instead of just like busting your butt to barely scrape by, you actually have some breathing room, right? You can actually try something new, take a chance, or just like chill out a bit, which honestly, a lot of us could use a little less financial anxiety these days, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it goes even deeper than that. Altman's saying that when everyone's getting this basic dividend, we all feel more connected, like we're all in this together.
Right.
Because when everyone has a piece of the pie, they're going to care a lot more about how well the economy is doing.
Because we're all sharing in the success. It's like a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing.
Oh.
But let's be real for a second. A system like this, it would be a huge undertaking. There'd be some serious hurdles to overcome, wouldn't there?
Oh, absolutely. And Altman knows this. First off, think about it. Putting a value on every company and every piece of land just to figure out the taxes, that's going to be incredibly complicated. And then you got companies potentially saying, see ya, and moving overseas to avoid the whole thing, right?
Right.
And then there's always people who are going to try and cheat the system, right? So yeah, these are all very real issues. And to actually implement this kind of American equity fund, it would be like mind-bogglingly complex.
It's like, I don't know, it's like trying to walk this crazy tightrope, right? You got this amazing potential on one side, but then this massive, like, mountain of challenges to actually make it happen.
Yeah.
But I gotta give it to Altman. He's at least, like, acknowledging that these are real issues.
Exactly. And that's, I think, what's so refreshing about all this, you
Yeah.
know? It's not about pretending we have all the answers. It's about actually having the, I don't know, the guts to be like, okay, what if we try something totally new? Even if it seems kind of out there, you know?
Because burying our heads in the sand and just hoping for the best, that's not going to cut it. Right?
Yep, not even close. Look, we're talking about a future where AI, it could completely transform everything. And if we want to be ready for that, we got to be open to new ideas.
New ways of thinking, too.
Totally.
So before we wrap up, I kind of want to bring it back to you, like you listening right now. Imagine, just for a second, that this whole Moore's Law for everything thing, it actually happens. What would a world with that kind of abundance, what would that look like in your life, like every single day? What would you do if you knew that, like, you didn't have to stress about money so much? If your basic needs, like, they're just covered.
Yeah, you could finally start that business you've always talked about.
Right. Or go back to school.
Spend more time with your family. I mean, when you really start to think about it, the possibilities are pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot to take in, I know.
It is.
But it's a conversation worth having. And if this whole thing has, like, piqued your interest, and I kind of hope it has, we really encourage you to check out Altman's whole essay, Moore's Law for Everything.
It's a good one.
It really is. We'll put the link in the show notes. You know, it's just, it really makes you think about the future in a whole different way.